On refugee policy, you were asked on April 1st about why refugee flights hadn't continued and the president not raising caps on refugees, and you were asked whether it had anything to do with the situation on the border. You said, quote, no, it's not related to that. Now, of course, the president referenced the border directly in his explanation over the weekend. You mentioned it yesterday. So how do you square those two explanations, previously saying the border was not a factor and then now saying that it is?
Well, let me walk you back a little bit to the last few months. I will do this briefly, I promise. Josh's eyes are glazing over here as I'm just kidding, as he's worried how long I'm going to talk here. I'll first say during the transition, Sean, we took a look at what had happened over the last few years and how we could set a more aspirational, larger goal so we could welcome more refugees into the country. And we set a big aspirational goal, which we remain committed to, which is welcoming in 125,000 refugees by the end of the fiscal year next year. And the president announced that, and he announced that we want a down payment on that, I should say, 62.5 thousand by the end of this fiscal year. Now, a couple things have happened in the last several weeks, and some of that was happening deep in the policy wells, and sometimes it takes some time for that to be communicated more broadly within the administration, including the fact that the impact on ORR, the Office of Refugee Resettlement, of having, of course, welcoming in, delivering on a decision the president made to treat children as they come across the border humanely and ensure they are treated in a safe manner, has a way on the system, including the Office of Refugee Resettlement, including personnel and including funding. That is a factor, but some of that decision making is happening and kind of people, at the Office of Refugee Resettlement in ways that maybe, I wasn't communicated to about it at that time, but it happened over the last couple of weeks. And in that time, I should say, this month, so just this month, so recently, probably since I made those comments, HHS transferred $850 million from the Public Health and Social Services Emergency Fund and $287 million from other departmental accounts to the Unaccompanied Children Program in order to ensure we can treat kids with humanity and ensure they're safe. These transfers were made using the HHS Secretary's Standing Transfer Authority and have no impact necessarily on the refugee program, but it's funding from the same office. And the president's responsibility is to look across government, look across resources, and his team is, and see where there is a capacity and where resource assessments need to be made.
So are you saying that the border has emerged as a factor in the last 20 days? I mean, even before April 1st, we're already seeing an increase in the number of migrants arriving at the border and the strains it was presenting to the system. Are you saying the border was not a factor back then at all in the thinking about refugee policy?
Well, let me bring you behind the curtains of how policymaking works. You assess over time, and you look over time at your systems, your resources, your processes, what changes need to be made within government to address issues as they're arising. And certainly we've seen, of course, there's been a number of unaccompanied children, a need to reopen shelters or open shelters across the country. Taking care of children and doing it in a humane way costs money, and that's something that has certainly had an impact. But a big part of, as we've looked at and assessed challenges here, the primary obstacle to reaching the goal has been the decimation of the refugee admission program under the prior administration. And as you know, there is part when refugees arrive and they are resettled and provided benefits by ORR. There is also the vetting process that takes place, and through our State Department, this was all decimated under the last administration. And we had to make an assessment of that as well. That happens over a progressive period of time. There's not a magic day when you wake up and an alarm bell goes off. You have to assess over time what the needs are and make changes as needed.
And real quick, why did you guys identify May 15th as sort of the horizon for when you would announce a new cap on
I expect it will actually be sooner than that, and we were always going to be assessing what our resources, our capacity would allow for, but I expect it will be before May 15th. It's approximately a month from last Friday.
May I just take a prerogative with my always unglazed over eyes and just follow up on this issue?
Sure,
it's an
go
important
ahead.
issue, but why not just raise the cap to your promise? The cap is just that. It's a cap. It's not a guarantee. You're not requiring that number of people to come in through the program. Why
You're-
keep the cap lower, back off this promise? Progressives, of course, were skeptical of this president early on and through the primary. They're saying that this is a broken promise, arguably his first big one of his administration.
Well, first, we're actually going to set a cap, a large cap soon, and I expect it's going to be before May 15th. But, I think we wanted to, you're right, in the sense that the cap is just a number. Most oftentimes throughout history, you don't reach the cap. The cap is just a number. We could set the cap at 100,000 or 1 million. It doesn't really. We're trying to send a message to the world that we want to welcome in refugees, and that's who we are as an administration. Hence, we wanted to provide greater clarity for what our overall objectives were, even if they weren't digested initially on Friday. I would say that, one, we'll set that cap. Two, we wanted to assess, given the impacts of the decimation of the refugee admissions program, the need to move some resources around, what was possible. But we do want to set a large cap. We do want to send a message to the world that we remain committed to our objective. We've always been committed to the objective, and the goal of 125,000 by next fiscal year is really